are back. Another Ex-Homeschoolers Club. It is your boy, Jacob Gooden. And, we are in the best ex-homeschooler podcast this side of the internet. Today, my friend Aaron is on with us. For those of you who are part of Achieve, Aaron MacDonald is with us. We are going to touch on his homeschool journey. We're going to touch on art stuff. We're going to see where the conversation goes. It's very free flowing. But before I bring him in here, I have one favor to ask of you. That is this. I am launching a newsletter. Okay. So if you're interested in getting the newsletter with all the updates of this show, maybe some book recommendations, I don't know what it's going to be. That's going to be the top link down below in the show notes. So go click it. Give me your email address and I promise I won't be spammy. Okay. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just, I'm going to keep you guys updated. What's going on, that kind of a thing. And, yeah, so there's that. Okay. Without further ado, Aaron MacDonald, how are you, my friend?
Hi, Jacob. I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing really well too. I'm excited to be talking to you. It's been a long time that we've since we've seen each other in person. That
Hmm.
is. Um, I feel like I ran into you in the streets of Ventura at some point
Yes.
as an older kid, but like I really remember mostly from like junior high and high school, and even before that. I know I was better friends with your brother Joe, but uh, but we were still friends. We were friendly back in the day, group
Yeah.
solutions and achieve and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, thank you for coming on the show. I'm so excited to hear more about your homeschool experience and journey. So, with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Give us kind of a little bit of a run through of like how long were you homeschooled? Um, you know, I already mentioned you have a brother, but like give me kind of the background of like home life, curriculum you used. I don't know. Just give me a little bit of the homeschool journey, and we'll start there.
So when I was a kid, or like baby up through like kindergarten to the maybe a grade or two above that, my mom had me in um regular school. And so I got to do that for a little bit. And she got a scholarship to UCSB for art, full ride. And so we moved up to Santa Barbara for a little bit when I was 4 or 5. I think, yeah, 4 or 5. And then she got pregnant with my brother Joseph. And she really wasn't feeling the art program as she was seeing it. And so my parents decided to move back down to Oxnard and Ventura and just raise me and my brother.
Yeah.
So I was I did homeschooling. First it was Konos and then it turned into Achieve out of that up until high school. And then in high school I did independent study at El Camino.
Okay.
So I got to go through use Ventura College and stuff.
I don't know that I've had anybody come on who's talked about El Camino, but so it
Hmm.
was through Ventura College, self study. So did you have classes or was it all work from home?
Yeah, we had classes. Part of the class, they used Ventura College for um, like basic math and English and Spanish and stuff.
Mhm.
So we got to fill out those credits for high school, which also doubled for Ventura College, which was cool. And then otherwise it was like textbook stuff that I'd review with my teacher and visit her 2 or 3 times a week.
And that's me kind of jumping the gun a little bit of like the homeschool experience, but I hadn't really, because I never did that. So I was homeschooled all the way through. But I know a lot of kids who went to El Camino who were still pretty involved in the homeschool community, especially who had younger siblings who were still at home through that. But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what was your kind of like day to day homeschool experience like? Like, did you guys obviously you had some kind of curriculum, but was your mom very like set in like we do all of Becca or we do all of this one particular type of curriculum, or was she kind
Yeah.
of one of those people who like my mom who mixed it all up and was kind of like, okay, we do this for math and we do this for science, we do that for that, and that kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
I remember going through basic like multiplication tables and stuff and being like real frustrated.
Mhm.
Um, I was like, "Oh, Mom, this is so hard. This is so hard." She's like, "Do you want me to change it? Do you want me to change it?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I was just responding to her anxiety about making me not making me learn good.
Right.
And so um, we changed to this program called Matthew C.
Oh, love
And
that.
yeah, and it was kind of this guy, like the guy's individualistic, like his individual take on math and all the fun tricks that he likes to use and stuff. So that was kind of interesting. It was creative.
Dude, yeah, I loved Matthew C for those non-homeschoolers who might be listening, was essentially like, especially the early years, there's a lot of block math involved in it. So
Oh
he
yeah.
had, I don't know if you use the blocks at all, but he also had other stuff
Wow.
too. But they had these like, you had like a one block, and then you had, I think of it almost kind of, it's kind of like Legos in a way too. It's like you had like a two, and then like a five, and then you had like 100, and it was like a 10 by 10 square. And anyway, but he would show you the example using the blocks of like, oh, here's how you do like a multiplication table, or here's how you do whatever. So you build the whole thing, and then you could individually count it essentially. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, he had a bunch of other little tricks and stuff too. But I still think about that when I do multiplication tables. What I see is like 7 by 7 or 7 by whatever, whatever the numbers are. That's how I view it in my head. So
Yeah, I like math. Um, just how organized it is
yeah,
and stuff. Not really sure how useful it is past like algebra, but
it depends on what you go into, right?
yeah,
But for people like you and I who kind of work more of, I don't know, I won't say we work the average job, but we don't necessarily need math in our everyday day to
yeah,
days, right?
yeah. But even like when I was working on base at the swimming pools, they would hire like the engineers would be talking to us when they're taking a swim, and they're like, "Yeah, we got this new girl. She was like a math major, and she's helping us like launch the rockets." And she thinks everything has to be right. Everything has to be like mathematically correct. But if it's off course, we just divide it by two and then get the average and then shoot it over there. And so, yeah, because like math is not nature. And
Mhm.
so,
Right.
um, but it is a really pretty powerful tool.
So I feel like you and I met through group solutions.
Yeah.
And I know that was your brother is a little bit closer in age to me, so I know him and I had a lot of classes together. But
Yeah.
were you involved in groups for like the majority of your homeschool experience? I know you talked about Konos that became Achieve, but for as long as Group Solutions existed, which I know it existed a little bit past, or I don't know, it could still exist to this day. I'm not 100% sure, um, but
Could be out there.
was Group Solutions a good chunk or a decent chunk, I guess I should say, of your homeschool experience?
Yeah, it was. I think that there's some pretty cool classes that went through group solutions, and there's
Absolutely.
a lot of good people there.
Yeah. Any classes that stick out?
Mr. Sanchez's morning talks were pretty funny. I realized
Absolutely.
that all of his like Bible lessons were all from Fight Club.
Okay, I've
Did,
never put that
did
together.
yeah, he was like he would be teaching about like giving it up to God and stuff,
Okay.
and he'd be like, the things you own end up owning you. And it was just like I watched Fight Club, and it like when I was older, I watched Fight Club, and like all came. I was like, where have I heard all this stuff before? And like, oh,
That's hilarious.
I told it one time. I don't know when I got to do this because I haven't seen them in forever, but I told Caitlin Sanchez that I was like, I feel like all of your dads opening sermons were all from Fight Club, and she's like, ah, that's hilarious because me and my brother used to watch that movie all the time.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
had never pieced that together until you just brought that up and you said that. I was like, now it makes me want to go watch Fight Club because I'm like, I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's spot on. So, Mr.
yeah,
Sanchez, if you hear this, we see you. We know what you did.
yeah. They were good. They were good sermons,
They
dude.
were good. They were good. Yeah. But yeah, the groups I think it was impactful for my homeschool experience because it was really the like the social aspect of like homeschooling for me was like group solutions massive for that, right? Because you get, a couple hundred kids together every 2 weeks and like in kind of a regular school setting with classrooms and like I don't know, I think it was at least for me it was very important because I was like otherwise I was just going to be at home. Uh and so I don't know, that was key to the social aspect because one of the biggest, things that everyone talks about with homeschooling is like, oh, well, are you like a weird, isolated, like have no social skills kind of a person? It's like,
Yeah.
not, I don't think so.
It's like, what is your guys' experience like? Oh, will they round us up like cattle and they put us through these different classrooms and stuff? Talking about regular school, I
Yeah.
guess. What was interesting about being primarily like a Christian centered group is that I didn't really get to learn about like personality types or even like type like of course like gender and sexuality stuff that was all kind of like coming out later,
Hmm.
I think. But looking back, I was like, oh, I'm like, and not even, I mean, like autism, there was definitely like a lot of autism in the
Hmm.
homeschool sphere. And so I got to learn a little bit about that. And,
Yeah.
but other stuff like people being gay or like people coming from rough backgrounds, maybe sort of have like some sort of personality disorder and stuff. Like I didn't know about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, looking back on people now, I'm like, oh, that's why it was that way, or that's why they were so different and stuff.
I think it definitely, I agree with you because homeschooling tends to lend itself right to the families who have kids that maybe need a little bit more of a special education, whether that's something like dyslexia or ADHD or like you said, autism, Asperger's. Like there's a variety of different things that like kind of lend itself to being like, okay, maybe we'd pull a kid out of traditional school and put them in a homeschool environment where mom and
Yeah,
dad can work much more one on one with them, which there's pros and cons to that. But I think it was interesting because, yeah, to your point, as kids, then we got to experience growing up with these kids who were they were different, right? And we got to learn how to interact with them, which was, I don't know that many kids who, grew up with a best friend who has autism or Asperger's. Maybe it's a little bit more common now, but I don't know. At that time, it felt like we were ahead of the curve, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah. It was more accommodating for that in that environment.
I was gonna ask you too with so what years okay, you were obviously homeschooled from early grade school up to high school. Uh to give kind of context for people, what year did you graduate high school?
In 2013.
2013. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, so we're not that far off because I graduated in 2014. So
Oh, no.
yeah, so there's really not not as big of a gap.
Yeah.
I think when you're younger, right, the age gap always seems much bigger than as we
Yeah,
get
it
older.
does.
Now it just like gets smaller and smaller. Um, but um, no, I asked that to put that in a little bit of context because that's one of the questions everybody asks. What from who's kind of outside of the homeschool group we grew up with, where we know all these people, but the people outside of it, they go, "Well, when were you guys homeschooled?" And I'm like, "Well, it was like the early 2000s, the 2010s. It was kind of the era. So there was a lot of
Yeah.
things going on, and like you said, religious homeschooling was a big part of what we grew up with. It was like kind of I don't know about you, but religion was kind of tied into almost everything we did. Um,
Yeah.
curriculum wise, studies wise, extracurriculars, that kind of a thing. But is that pretty true for you as
Hmm.
well?
Oh, definitely.
Did you do anything like, um, I know I went to like Awanas as a kid, uh, stuff like that, but uh, I don't know, was like, I guess talk about that a little bit. Like, what was it in the schoolwork? Was it like what? How did I guess how did religion impact your homeschool experience?
It was definitely like a cornerstone of the experience. Uh, I took to religion pretty intensely as a um we would go like 3 times a week, I think. And I don't know if it's because I'm sort of somewhat gullible, but I always put like a real sincere effort into things and stuff. And for some reason, spiritual stuff has always been something that I've always like clicked with.
Hmm.
And so the church that we were raised in primarily was like more like spiritual gifts focused and like speaking in tongues and laying on of hands and stuff. So it's like people from like the Jesus movement in
Okay.
California.
Yeah.
And but it's really good for my parents because they're pretty like they're not super orthodox or really uptight type Christian people. They're more like relaxed and like peaceful. Yeah, it's definitely built into their routine and stuff. Like it definitely influenced me a lot to get up every morning and to spend devotional time. And then whenever my parents have like a disagreement or they're trying to work something out, I always see that they're really trying to work it out. They're not like pitting against each other or something. They try to work it out and they become two people and then they say, "Well, what does God think about this?" And so then they create God as like the third voice of what their highest good would be between the both of them. And I think that that's a very wise and very effective way of running a marriage. Oh yeah, I always thought that that was very admirable of them.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept because I think I'm not religious any longer, or I'm not Christian any longer. Let's say that. I won't say I'm not religious.
Yeah,
I'm more spiritual than I am religious, I guess is what I would say now. But I think what's
yeah,
interesting about what you said was that yeah, when mom and dad would have a disagreement, they would bring in ultimately a third party, right? God.
yeah,
And I think that's interesting. And I think that's to your point. I think that's a good lesson or a good example for people to see is like sometimes you need when you have disagreement with people, sometimes you need that outside perspective, right? That can kind of come in and ask the right questions and be there and help kind of guide through the situation to
yeah,
get those two people to kind of reconcile and figure out, the path moving forward. So,
yeah. Because it's and then when you bring it to God, so to speak, it's almost like this version of the highest good that two people see
mhm.
steps in, like it steps in, and it like everything becomes like ground zero. It's not like, oh, God wants me to like defeat you in this argument, or God want like that because their Christian concept of God is love, and then love is um, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, etc. All the like God is all those virtues based, and so I think that that was a really good environment to grow up in.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think I won't say that I won't say that I had the exact same experience of really recognizing when my parents had disagreements that they were bringing God into it, but I will say
Yeah,
I do think God was such a big part of growing up that and to your point, God is love, God is all of these things. He's the fruits of the spirit, right? Um and so yeah, having those kind of play out inside of how we work things out and how we live life and how we, that was a very big
Yeah.
key part, I think, of childhood. And that was, I think, where a lot of the homeschool community really connected. Because I think on the back end we had a lot of maybe disagreements when it came to like, there's always disagreements inside of like church and religion of like the different denominations and whatever. But I think
Yeah.
one of the
I never
universal
understood that.
same
I was like,
it's
what? How many different Christian types are there?
yeah. But what was cool was ultimately I think what really was the through thread for a lot of us was this idea uh of like the Jesus love, right? And like the love and how we need to represent that to the culture.
Yeah.
And what was being taught to us kids was, you know, to love one another and get along with one another and to like, it's okay to have disagreements, but here's how we deal with them. And that's where, again, going back to group solutions was a great environment to kind of work through a lot of that because we, it was our for me, it was a big social element of the homeschool experience. And I know there was other things, there were school dances and field trips and all the other
Yeah.
stuff too. But group solutions I think was that really for me a very pivotal social aspect of like just being able to be around other kids and like kind of have
Uh-huh.
that, I don't know, play out I
S-
guess a little bit more.
Seeing girls. What? A
Yeah, we can talk about
girl?
that too. No, because that's a whole nother can of worms of like eh, dating. I mean I didn't date until college.
Yeah, I didn't date till I was like 20. I
Same.
don't know, something later on.
Well, inside the homeschool world I feel like there was, I don't know. Maybe did you feel this way? The I feel like there was this message of like, well, you guys are all like siblings, like you guys all play together and whatever, and like they're like your sisters, like to the opposite sex, and well, and also because we grew up in a religious, there's also the heteronormative aspect of
Yeah.
like um, so not
Yeah.
even we can't we that's the whole another rabbit hole is down into like LGBT and sexuality and all that stuff. But um,
Yeah.
but
Fight Club.
yeah, exactly.
Fight Club.
But yeah, so dating, I don't know about you. It was kind of a no-no for me. I also just looked at everybody as like these are like my siblings. I don't know that I would want to date any of them. I don't know. Maybe it was different for you.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to date or anything. And one time, uh, Carrie, um, forgot her last name. But Carrie had this boat and she wanted me to come on it on like as like an outing
Okay.
and like with her mom or her dad driving the boat or something. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I liked her. And and I was like maybe like 13 or 14 or something. And then my mom was like, you're gonna be on a boat with a girl? No, no, you can't do that. Like, what? Oh, okay, whatever. And then and then Carrie asked Emily because I had declined the offer, and then Emily was just like on this outing solo with Carrie. It was like supposed to just be me and her, I think. Emily explained to me later, she was like, Aaron, I have this like really long kind of, it was, I don't know if it was kind of awkward kind of boat ride. But
That's just how it was. I had John Slagboom on and we were talking about dating and liking girls
yeah,
and I think it was just, I mean, dating in general is like awkward. The
yeah,
first like
it's
liking
rough.
somebody and having crushes on people and all that kind of stuff is like always super awkward. But then you tack on like the homeschool world, which also, like you said, like your mom was very much like, you're not going out alone with those, with a girl. Like that's,
Yeah,
what are we talking about? So there's also all these guidelines and these rules and this box that were put in of like, don't do this, or this is bad, and you know, we don't date, we don't kiss before marriage. The list goes on and on and on. I don't know about you. A big book that was thrown at me a lot was like the I Kiss Dating Goodbye, and like I'm trying to remember. There was another book too, but Josh Harris and just kind of this whole concept of like not dating, but like courtship. It this like heavy intention for like marriage and parents being very involved in dating and like I don't
Yeah.
know. There was all of that. I don't know. I don't know if maybe that was pushed on you nearly as much as it was me, but it felt like it was just there.
Yeah, we had to do this like the purity ritual thing at church or like the purity ring.
Hmm.
Like I vow to remain pure up until marriage
Wow.
and
So did you
stuff.
have a purity ring?
Yeah, I did, but I lost it. Ironically,
You lost it,
I lost it.
putting
I
air
think it
quotes
just
around
like
that.
I don't know. It fell. I remember the last time it fell off in the kitchen, and it just like got kicked under the oven or something. And so like I was like, that's fine.
Let me ask you this because I didn't have a purity ring. I had buddies who had one. Was it something that you felt like you wanted to do or that you had to do?
It was like what I had to do,
Okay.
and like I think even at the time I was like kissing, gross, or like
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's kind of an early thing, I feel like, for like I remember going to this ceremony that my friend had for becoming a man. And I think it was like his 13th birthday. It was like 12, 13, somewhere around that. Right when you're
Mhm.
starting to grow hair, starting to smell worse, the typical man stuff.
Yeah.
And his dad did this whole there was a presenting of like a sword, and I want to say there was a purity ring, and there was just a lot of conversation around being a man and what it is to be a man and what it is to be a godly man. And I'm not saying all of it was wrong. It was a little cringy looking back at it. I'm like, this is a little cringy.
Yeah.
You're kind of having like the birds and the bees
Em-
talk with your dad in front of like your 10 closest friends,
yeah.
um, at your
Embrace it.
at your birthday party, and and I don't know. It was just one of those things where it felt interesting because my parents never pushed me to do the purity ring thing. Expected, I think they expected me to kind of live by the purity ring esqueness, but they were like, you don't have to wear a ring. That's dumb. It's just like a made up symbol, type of thing. And but but yeah, I just remember it kind of being this like pushed upon us type of thing. It never, I don't know, it didn't feel as much like a conversation to be had and a discussion to be had of like, oh, do you want to do this? Do you not want to do this? And I think maybe within kind of the homeschool religious group that we grew up in, I think there was maybe a lot of things that were kind of that way of just kind of this like expectation that you do this. This is the way you live life. And maybe that's just a church thing in general too. But this is the way you live life, and this is how you do it. And you know, it was less of a conversation. At least I feel that way.
I think that sex is just such a mysterious and powerful thing, and that a lot of people felt a lot of shame about it and stuff. And I don't know, I'm still working through a lot of that stuff. And um, it's like sex is like a bad word, as like it's like such a negative connotation in the environment that we grew up in.
Yes.
But then how do you like, but it's obviously one of the best things about being a human being.
To your point, I think what was so I've had a lot of conversations with my parents now around sex and things because
Ugh.
they've been really awkward. I'm gonna be very honest with people. They've been very awkward, but I think in unpacking our past lives, our childhood lives, one of the things
Yes,
that I've learned is that we grew up with this, like you said, this understanding sex is like bad, but it's also good, right? And it's like
it's
in
good for one instance and
right,
then that's
exactly.
it.
It's like good within this context, right? But it's not. But I don't think the context was ever really discussed as heavily with kids of like, well, why is sex inside of marriage a better context than like just having sex with anybody and everybody, right? So sex is
Yeah.
bad, unless it's in marriage, and some people would even argue for the sole purpose of reproducing, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of this, but we don't talk about why it's bad as much. We just our parents and our, leaders and mentors and stuff tell us, oh, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, and then we get to marriage and, oh, now it's all of a sudden it's good. And that's where a lot of, I
Yeah.
think, the sexual frustration comes into play for a lot of people, of like, also that impacts the way we think about sex. So as we become adults and some of us get married, or we just have sex for the first time, there's like this weird shame and guilt around it because we're programmed to think that sex equals bad. When in reality it doesn't. It's just that's what we've been programmed to think.
Yeah. And that's what I think, that that dichotomy with sex being bad also channels a lot of that, like, compulsive porn indulgence a little bit.
Absolutely.
Um, but then it's like, I feel like our culture is like, sex is bad, but if you watch porn, just don't tell anyone. Just keep it on the down low. That's okay. Just watching a lot of porn. I feel like that's like the undercurrent of like our culture, is like, just keep it quiet about that. It's like, no, this is actually like draining the life force out of me, and I'm not really happy anymore and
Yeah.
stuff. So, but then it's so, like, it's so fucking, like, hard to get, like, in a waiting to get in alignment with like a good partner that you can have sex with, because, oh my god, I've been through some doozies of partners. Like, I definitely learned a lot about the world with and where people come from, but you can like really fuck yourself up by getting attached to someone that way.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, you, like, your body starts breaking down, and you're like losing hair and losing weight and stuff. And but I think there's just a lot of healing that needs to go on around sex.
Absolutely. I think I feel as if when we were kids, and I'm not talking about kids like single digit. I mean, maybe single digits, but like definitely those those teenage years, the growing
Uh-huh.
into being an adult person where the hormones kick in and all that stuff. I genuinely believe that, I think if parents had been a lot less scared to talk about sex with their kids and talk, and they we would all be in a better place right now. And I'm not saying that they necessarily had to maybe have like all of the greatest answers, but just like the ability to even talk about it with parents and people you trust, and that kind of a thing, and kind of, I think there would be less of a stigma around it. Um, and it's taken a long time to kind of like seek out, I think for me, just kind of seek out like good, healthy advice around sex. Cause like I struggled when I got married, like I felt very guilty having sex. I did not like it. It did not, it
Oh,
felt
that's too
great.
bad.
It felt great, but it was like I
Yeah.
felt awful after the fact. I felt just like dirty and
Oh,
wicked, right? And so it was not
oh, it's a split. That sucks, man.
right. And it's taken a long time. I say it's taken a long time. It feels like a long time, but it took a couple years to really kind of like start to heal that internal voice in my head that was telling me this is a bad thing. It was not a bad thing. It just was, I had been programmed to believe sex equals bad, right? And
Yeah.
so once I changed that mindset to sex equals a good, or sex equals, I don't know, maybe good is not the right word, but sex equals something, right? Insert
Yeah.
something there. Um, it's a process, people. We're working on it. Um, but it changed a lot of like it changed the way I viewed it, and so it became less of this like taboo thing that I didn't want to talk about. I didn't want to do whatever. And I'm thankful I've met some incredible people along the way. I was thinking this is a huge tangent we're going on here, but I met almost a year ago to the date. I met like a leading doctor in men's health, specifically erectile dysfunction. Now, I don't
Uh-huh.
currently have erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
However, it was interesting to like sit down and talk with her about sex and about penises and about, all of the things that go into it because she's like, it's primarily a brain game. And she's like, and she immediately clocked me as like, you grew up in a religious environment. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I can tell because the way you squirm when I say penis, you're like uncomfortable, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, interesting. I just thought that was kind of normal. She's like, no, that's not normal. That's just, you grew up in this environment. You've been programmed that like sex and anything to do with sex is just kind of like, we don't talk about that. It's dirty words. Those are the bad words. We don't use the bad words. Um, and so I don't know. It's refreshing to kind of like have people like that in your life who kind of they start to heal you from these things that we grew up believing, right? You kind of give you different perspective
Yeah.
to think about.
Yeah. And I think that my encounters with sex, because I don't think yeah, I think the first time I had sex was like I was 20 or something. But then, and so all those like, the squirms and the flinches and the kind of like, oh, this is kind of dirty kind of stuff. Like it was kind of like at the surface with these experiences, um, with these partners, but these girls would kind of like look at you like, you kidding me, homeboy? Like, come on. Are you like, and like you're right. It was kind of like a splash of cold water. It was like, come on, man, like this is nature, like this is real. And so it's like you kind of like metaphor, are you gonna metaphorically just live in your parents' basement about this for the rest of your life kind of stuff. But um I'm really glad that um I'm just really thankful for that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess have you done any like has it just been through kind of like having different partners and learning and experiencing, or have you done any like therapy or like I listen to a shit ton of podcasts, that's why I have a podcast, but like and reading books
Yeah.
and like researching stuff where I was just like, okay, like if I got to a point where basically in my brain, I just chose to basically be like, sex is no longer a bad word in my brain. And now I want to be comfortable researching and learning, and I have to seek out information, whether that's a therapist or whatever. But like, was there was there a moment for you, or has it, like I said, has it just kind of been like, I've had multiple partners now, and I just kind of like learning. We're older now, right?
Yeah.
We're not high schoolers anymore. Um, you know, we've got a little decade or so under our belts at this point of being adults.
There's not a whole lot specifically with sex um that I have done therapeutic work on, but there's one instance recently that I can recall. It was the kind of healing my relationship with women in a sense, because I found out, I mean, somewhat obviously that I was still in this like frustrated, idealized state about women. Because like after my first pretty serious relationship ended about 2 years ago, I was still clinging to this like holy image of like what a woman is. Like they're just like pure, beautiful princesses of just like my mother and stuff. So it's kind of I had to work with myself and talk, uh, kind of like invoke these different versions of me that were still clinging on to like this idealized version of what a woman is. Like me, I think it's like a childhood version of me still was idealizing women as these sort of holy and pure beings that wouldn't just like want to go out and fuck or like get drunk or just kind of like sleep around and stuff,
Yeah.
which is just like a human thing to do. It's like I've done that, and like why wouldn't I think that another girl wouldn't want to behave just like me because it's fucking fun. And in these sessions that I'd have, I'd just kind of talk to myself in those states about women just being people. It's like, Aaron, it's a they're just a woman, okay? It's not like this archetypal pure version that you're still like clinging on to, because like there's such a resistance trying to like figure out why uh things would go down a certain way, like after the breakup with my ex and stuff, like just different nasty behaviors coming out. And just in these visual states talking to myself in this way, I saw this like small, like a short, like 6 to 8 year old version of myself grow into a teenager and hopefully beyond that. It was just a really interesting experience working with myself that way, because there's definitely parts of me that still carry on these idealistic ways of how I think the world should work.
That's so interesting. I have so many questions around what you just said. I'm gonna start
Yeah.
here, but first of all, I want to say this. Thank you for being vulnerable. We're talking on really. We didn't know where this conversation was gonna go.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, so I wanted to
Yeah.
say that first. I wanted to say thank you for being vulnerable with me. Um, Secondly, I don't know if you had this experience at all, but like growing up in church, there was very much. I talked about this on my purity culture episode that I did when I talked about there was a example when my church did these things called purity conferences, and you would go and it was the sex talk for church basically, and they would split the guys and the girls into two different groups. And in the guys group, we were told that women are like a pie, and so we're showing a pie, and then like an apple pie, and then and
Okay.
then the leader takes his finger and he sticks it in the middle of the pie, right? And he just kind of like twirls
Ah,
it around, and he goes,
Jesus.
that's like when you start to like hold hands and maybe like a little bit of, kissing. You're just being flirty, right? And like, you're starting to like kind of mess up this pie. And we're like, okay, cool. And he takes his whole hand and he like kind of grabs it, right? And he kind of mushes it up a little bit more. And he's like, that's like we're getting into like kissing and heavy petting and like all that. So we're another step. And eventually
Uh,
it leads to he like spits in the pie and then like mixes it really in there. And he's like, that's like you have sex with this girl. Like, and all along the path as he's doing this to the pie, he continually is asking us, do you want to eat this pie? Right. And by the time he spits in it, you have that one dude in the back who's like, yeah, I
Fucking
still
A.
want to eat it, dude. But like everyone else is like,
Yeah,
dude,
he's got his shades on.
yeah,
He's like, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
I'll
want
still eat
that
it.
pie.
Yeah. Cause he knows he's going to be the only person to get that pie because nobody else wants it. And so anyway, but I think there was a lot of kind of examples like that given throughout the years. I know bubblegum is another one that a lot of people heard, but like to kind of do what you were talking about, it's kind of exemplify women as like these like holy, perfect things.
Yeah,
And you don't want to mess that up, right? But sex messes that up. And so I think that again plays into when I had sex for the first time, I felt really disgusting after
yeah,
because of the fact that I felt like I had taken this person who was a beautiful apple pie. Just this is a terrible example. This is, like this is very
yeah.
much objectifying women and
No,
things like that. But this is what we were
yeah,
taught growing up. And so, in taking that and then making it this disgusting spit in apple pie that nobody ever wants to eat again. And so I felt like I had ruined this person, which gives it a lot of shame. It
yeah,
ruins that angelic feeling, like you were talking about, of this person is like perfect and holy and all those kind of things. So
yeah. It's such a trip And it's almost like, and then after that, I felt like kind of this leveling, these two sides coming together. I was like, it's just a woman here.
Mhm.
Erin's a woman and she's a human, just like you.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting getting out of that misogynistic headspace.
I want to ask you too, because you talked about like seeing like a 6-year old version of yourself and then watching it grow up. So
Yeah,
how do you get into that headspace, or where do you like I don't know. I have trouble visualizing things like that. I do some meditation and I do things like that, but like I've always really struggled with kind of, you know, that kind of a thing. So I'm just curious how you get
yeah,
in that headspace.
yeah, that's a good question. So apparently we're always visualizing all the time. And so it's not exactly a clear image that I'm seeing. It's more like impressions and stuff in kind of like a dream state. But it came from Teal Swan. Have you heard of Teal Swan?
I have, yes.
Yeah, she talks about she does her like she runs through her completion process. And so it's really interesting. Initially you start and you say it's usually you can see something coming up because you're feeling like a lot of resistance and like tightness and like the front of your body, probably your whole body. So like something's holding you back. It's like, no, I don't want to go there. Like when you're like pulling on a dog,
Hmm.
like its
Right,
neck, like,
exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But you get that feeling inside you. It's like, what is wrong? What is wrong with me right now?
Mm.
And so the other night I went through this. I just got real relaxed. You just have to calm yourself down, lie down on your bed, and you say, like, you invoke it in your body. You're like, I am going to allow the part of myself that is in most resistance to what is happening to possess my body. And then you just let it, like, on the count of three, I go one, two, three, and I just let it come through. And it, like, this, like, it'll be like younger versions of myself. It'll be like some twisted up version of myself that kind of spun out with my imagination. So it's like some crazy character. But a lot of the times are just like younger versions of myself that I have to talk to and I just have to start coaching them. I had a lot of resistance the other night because I've been getting things going for myself. I'm selling paintings and stuff. I'm teaching classes. I was like, what is wrong? Why do I feel like not doing any of this? What do I not want to do? And I'm like, I'm gonna let the part of myself that is in most resistance to possess my body. And so I sat there, let it come through, and I had like this dream picture in my head, and it was me when I was 19. And I had my glasses on, I had a paintbrush, and I'm like, man, this guy looks like he's pretty good at painting. And I had like this ratty shirt on, like this ratty long sleeve shirt. And I just let I just let it talk, like I just let myself talk through my voice at the moment. And he's like, I don't want to do this, and I don't think I can do this. I'm just I'm too scared. I feel like I'm gonna fail. And so I had to just talk to Aaron, you know that this works, you know that you're good at this, and people buy your paintings and they support you, and you know this because people fill up your classes. People are always liking your stuff. They give you pats on the back and stuff. And so that part of me started calming down, and it was like almost that same thing. I had this impression that he had a new understanding and he was getting older. And then it felt like something was coming together. And then afterwards you're like exhausted a little
Right.
bit because the experience of just fusing the two parts of yourself back together is like a really healing. And so you always need to take time out for healing.
That's amazing. I'm kind of like stunned and speechless. That's like beautiful. And I love that. And you're saying these things and I'm going, okay, I need to do this in my own life because I see the hangups and I usually I don't acknowledge that tightness and I push through it and I just, it's the pull yourself up by your bootstraps and like muscle through it.
Yeah, no, that's a recipe. Yeah, it's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm going, okay, when that happens, I need to do that. I need to take time and listen to those voices. Um, because something is there, something is telling me something. So, wow. Um, if you've yeah, for listeners, if you've take anything away from this podcast, I hope it's that because that was super powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
That does kind of lead nicely into I wanted to kind of ask you about what you're doing now. You're an artist, you're an art teacher, and you know, kind of what like I mean, you brought up before your mom was going to Santa Barbara for art school. So I'm sure she kind of had a hand in kind of molding that like passion inside of you, but also like where did that come from? When did you kind of figure out like I think I want to be an artist or I'm good at this or like, you know, when did that start?
It was definitely my mom's influence because she started painting after the miscarriage of my older sister, and I grew up around a lot of paintings of dead flowers, and they're very beautiful paintings. And so, of all the homeschool moms, they saw my mom as the artistic one, and so they had her teaching different classes and stuff. And so we would run through a lot of exercises that she learned at Oxnard College.
So that's kind of really the birthplace of it is your mom then kind of being like we're going to put an
Yeah,
emphasis on this. And was it
yeah.
primarily I know art is very there's a lot of people have a lot of different mediums they use. Do you have a particular medium that you like focus in on or I don't know.
Oh yeah,
I'm not as my art is different. Let me say that.
yeah.
I think everyone is an artist deep down in some capacity, but some people are more the traditional artists of paint and charcoals and things like that. But do you have a particular medium that you like?
Oh, as long as I get to paint, I'm okay with it. I can do acrylic or oil or
Okay.
gouache or watercolor, but I mostly prefer oil. Just
Okay.
it's the best.
Yeah.
But lately I've been doing a lot of acrylics because of just where I live. It's
Mhm.
not as stinky
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah,
Let's talk about job a little bit because I know you work in the art industry. So what do you
pretty
do?
much.
Like yeah, like you talked about teaching classes, but and then of course like how can people find your art or commission art that kind of thing as well.
Oh yeah, I work it's like a community nonprofit
Okay,
museum, and then next door they have a building where they host classes and do community family events and things. So I get to teach adult classes, and then during in the summertime we do kids summer camps. And but yeah, I'm on Instagram at Aaron MacDonald Art, and it's just a lot of business going on over there.
cool.
I post a lot of stuff that I'm into and stuff, and yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I was scrolling on there, kind of prepping for this episode, and I your stuff obviously pops up in my timeline quite a bit, but um, I was looking through and I was I was amazed. I mean, there's some beautiful pieces in there. So yeah, I'll definitely
Oh,
link it down
thanks.
below. There was one that stuck out to me that you did, and it's like a pixelated skull. Um, I don't
Oh
know,
yeah.
maybe yeah, but I just uh, the reason I'm fascinated by that is because I previously worked in um, I worked in the Web3 industry, and there's a lot of people who are
Uh-huh.
doing digital art, but I'm seeing a lot of like digital or like analog artists start to do these like pixelated paintings. And maybe
Yeah.
that's a style that goes back even pre, Web3, crypto, NFTs, all those dirty, nasty words that nobody likes. But but I don't know. I do you have a particular, I guess, style that you like to paint in or a particular like thing that you like to paint? Is it backdrops, portraits, anything like that?
Oh yeah. Primarily reside in landscapes and portraiture,
Okay.
and that's where I um really like. But man, I've been getting some of the curriculum from the Bauhaus School, which is the design school in Germany that got shut down by the Nazis. And yeah, like they have like most of their curriculum all pulled together and you can buy it and stuff. And oh my God, it's like learning stuff like how to like just different exercises that they give about like feeling textures and like collecting textures from everyday objects and like trees and things,
Yeah.
and then reproducing that uh by memory, like memory work, and also like um writing a word backwards, writing a word forwards with your right hand and at the same time writing it backwards with your left hand, like
Okay.
at the
So
same
creating
time.
like a mirrored image. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like exercises like that, it just, oh my God. Like actually like puts you in the physical realm, like molding your senses,
Hmm.
kind of really interesting stuff. Because like up until now, I was just looking at stuff and drawing it, but there's multiple ways to go about that.
I was in Boston recently and I went to the
Uh-huh.
Boston Art Museum, which was incredible. I'm learning to have a much better appreciation for art. I think as a kid, I always was just like, okay, it's a painting. Like, what's the big deal,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, and then more recently, I feel like in the last couple of years, I'm learning, understanding more of the history, but then also, like you said, like there's style that goes into, there's technique, there's different mediums, acrylic versus oil paint is very different, does different things, all those types of things. And so I'm by no means professional. I think I could have a conversation about it and be a little bit dangerous, but not like no, not to your degree. Um, let's say
yeah.
that. But
Uh,
it is interesting to kind of sit and like look at these things now and kind of try to understand more of like what these are actually representing, what the person was actually trying to invoke, or and then also what feelings it just invokes in yourself, right? Um,
mhm.
uh, because yeah, like you said, like being able to look at a piece of fruit or nature or something and draw that or paint that. I don't know. There's like a famous
Yeah,
quote. I don't know. It might not be that famous. It might be, I don't know, some hokey movie quote or whatever. But it's like art imitates nature or something like that.
yeah,
And um, I don't know. I'm learning and I'm learning to appreciate it more and like really sit in it and digest it a lot more and I don't know, be open
yeah.
to it. So
There's so many avenues. And like the further I get into it, there's just like expansive stuff. It's just so interesting.
yeah.
Like art imitates nature. Obviously we have to make ourselves houses and then kind of like work around or work with nature so that we can live a harmonious life with it. And so yeah, there's this other method of drawing that I found from this abstract expressionist, and he mapped it out. It's in German, but it was translated. And most people like there's a circle within a circle, and it's like object or like person, I, and then object over here. And most of the drawing and painting that we do comes from over the head, like through the eyes, over the head, onto the object, right? But what he was doing was actually dragging the spirit of the thing underground and up through his feet and on through his hands onto the page. So it was like he would make these abstract geometric looking radial forms and things of leaves and plants and different stuff in nature. And so I think that that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's incredible. like I said, I
Yeah.
don't know enough about it to like I'm an artist in my own right of what I can, you know, I think, like I said, I think everybody's an artist to some degree, but I think, you know, some people obviously
Yeah.
much more talented than myself, but um, that's definitely an interesting perspective to look at. I had never heard that, like, you know, we look over an object like above the
Yeah, because
head,
it yeah, like it comes through our eyes onto the object
right?
and then we interpret it that way. But he was just like pulling the thing underground into himself.
Right.
Like, who thinks of that, man?
Yeah. Well, and
That's so
like,
wild.
there's the argument to be made too of like, what does that even mean, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like um, because yeah, I don't know. I think to be a really a good artist, you have to. I'm kind of talking out my ass here, to be honest,
Yeah,
but
dude.
I think
I'm
I think to
about it.
be a good artist, you have to like you kind of have to be you have to be in sync with the thing that you are creating to some degree, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I say everyone is an artist because I believe what I do for work is a form of art. Creating
Mm.
podcasts, I think, is a form of art.
Yeah.
Um, and the most powerful things I've personally made have been the things that I've sat with and I've come more in sync with, and I've been like, you look at it from a different perspective, or at least in my opinion, I look at it from a different perspective than someone else, right? I can bang out a bunch of episodes of like the same exact thing. It's a formula, right? And you just create the same thing over and over. Um, but I think there's something to be said as an editor to being like, looking at something that somebody else has created and then being able to take that and twist it and tweak it and make it an even more
Yeah.
powerful expression of what that is. So it's something I strive
Yeah.
for on this show is I want to be a better storyteller and I want to learn to help tell people's stories better and edit and tweak that and make it powerful. But yeah, so that's my own type of artwork. It's not painting, but it's, you know, it is what it is. Um,
Yeah. Clipping.
clipping, cutting, yeah, trimming, adding music, um, yeah, all of the things. Some people wouldn't consider that art, um, but it, you know, I don't know. It's my creative expression. Let's say that.
Yeah.
So, dude, Aaron, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on and talking with me. And
Oh yeah,
um,
man.
we went deep. We went to some dark places, some happy
Yeah.
places.
We did. We
Uh,
we traced it back.
we came back to artwork. I'm gonna ask this: if there is there a memory from your homeschool experience that stands out as just kind of like super memorable? Whether it's like a cringy moment, a happy moment, it could be a sad moment, but something that maybe is like unique or just interesting that as you've now been out in the real world, you're like, oh, you know what? I got to do this thing or I experienced this thing and it's just so different than everybody else's experience of like
Yeah.
the other day I was having a conversation with my mother-in-law because it's been the holidays and I told her like, oh, I was on a mime team and she was like, you were a mime? And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, I've never told you that before. And she's like, she's like, nope, never knew that. Um, yeah, and I've known this woman for like 9 years, something like that. So these, you
You're
know,
real
really,
quiet about it.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's kind of a cringy thing to bring up, but um, I don't know. Is there anything as we've been reminiscing that stuck out in your brain if you're just like, oh yeah, that one thing that we did during homeschool years?
Oh yeah. It was a marine science camp.
Okay.
Did you ever get to do marine science camp?
I don't think I did. Was that the thing that would happen out at Channel Islands, or am I thinking of something else? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that. And so all the kids brought like their dads brought their kids and I was there kind of solo with all these other boys. And they were off doing something at one point and I was kind of trekking it by myself. But one day I'd kind of like stuck around to just make sure I was looked after. And so he was just kind of chilling on the beach, kind of away, just like letting me do my own thing. I ended up somebody gave me some of the squids that we had dissected earlier in the day, like squid parts and things.
Okay.
And and we had fed these little bull sharks, these little sand sharks earlier, but I thought that I would go out and do it by myself. And so I walk out there and like almost knee high into the water, and I start throwing the squids out, and they start coming, like they start swarming up around, like around me. All these sand sharks, and they start like kind of like kicking my ankles and stuff and like slapping me and stuff, just like wrestling each other, trying to get these squids. And that's what I was like, that like kind of like animal aggression. You're like, oh shit. I should probably step out of this area. It was like
Yeah.
having a bunch of little bulldogs uh like attacking each other like underneath your feet. But yeah, I stepped out of the water after that. That was
Oh my gosh.
all by myself. I think I was like 12 or 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did the Marine camps. That sounds, I mean, that particular story sounds a little bit scary, but
Yeah.
but
No, it was so cool. I love the ocean.
yeah. I mean, hey, it's almost just as vast as space, it seems like sometimes. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. It's funny. I keep seeing posts of like, why do all these billionaires want to go to space when they could be exploring the oceans? Because there's so much just uncharted ocean. And like, it's
Yeah.
a good point. It's a good point. There's a lot that we don't know that could be down there. Um, so anyway, dude, Aaron, this has been amazing. I appreciate you coming on and
Thank you,
and
Jacob.
telling your perspective. And I always tell everybody who comes on the show, you're always welcome back. Um, but man,
Yeah.
this has been good, and I appreciate your vulnerability. To our audience, thank you for listening. Hopefully, you got something. Please, I loved the thing that Aaron said about like visualizing and sitting in the uncomfortable and like acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you feel that way, take that to heart. Maybe try it for yourself. Who knows? It could work for you. We were talking before we got on the air about
Yeah.
just different things that work for us about settling anxieties and all that kind of stuff. And so, not everything works for everybody, but I would also love to hear what other people do as well for settling some of that as well. So drop it in the I don't know in the comments or shoot me an email. Yeah, you can shoot me an email. Shoot me an email, exhsclub@gmail.com. Or DM me on Instagram, exhsclub. Yeah, dude, this has been great. Once again, thank you. I can't say
Yeah.
it enough. I appreciate you. And yeah, to all the listeners, we'll be back next week. So until then, all right, peace.
Peace.